Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to put together a video to post this week about the progress I'm making on the layout before I had my little surgery. I want to talk about cork roadbed. I didn't use cork roadbed on this layout, and I didn't use it anywhere in Chillicothe. A lot of people don't use it, like Boomer, for example. I don't think he has any elevated roadbed on his layout. A lot of times on switching layouts, you don't see it because there's a lot of tracks close together and the main line isn't as obvious. In this picture I'm going to put in right here, you can see how the main line is elevated above the siding. That's, a lot of times out in the country, that's more obvious where the main line is. But the next picture right here, it's not as obvious what the main line used to be. This is actually in Circleville, Ohio. It's the actual remains of the Pennsylvania line that ran through there that Norfolk Southern took over, switching a grain elevator. But one of those used to be the main line, and it's no longer obvious. So that's why I'm not using cork roadbed. A lot of beginners think you need to use cork roadbed, like everyone uses cork roadbed. No, you don't, especially on a switching layout. You don't need to do it. If you're running the main line out through the country, usually you'll see the main line elevated pretty good, but a lot of times the main line isn't as obvious in the city. But on this short little layout, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'm going to build left to right. So basically I'm going to put a piece of track here. I'll figure out where the turnout's going to be. I'm going to cut off the track. I'm going to solder it to the turnout. And I'm going to just work my way this way. At that point, this Pico track is really good where it holds curves for the most part. You can't do this with Atlas Code 80. So I can, if you know, I noticed I'm going to have a little curve there, but I've straightened the track out to where I can solder the turnout to it. I'm going to leave it overhanging just a little bit at this point. I'll cut it off later when I figure out my staging track, how I want to attach it. But I'll just work my way left to right that way. One thing I did notice is I got a Y turnout for the section that goes between what they call the Callenbach warehouse and here. This sort of looks like a Y to me. Well, the Y turnout is not a unifrog, it is an electrofrog, which means the frog is not insulated. Actually has a wire here. So it's sort of a power routing turnout. So since I'm not gonna have any power feeding in from this end, it should be okay. But something you gotta take into account if you don't have insulated frogs. So I told you I'm working in centimeters because I'm sort of used to this. This is 110 centimeters long. So looking at this turnout, which is what I'm going to put in place first, it looks like the end of it will be around 31 centimeters from this end, which is about where this is now. You see, they've got a locomotive and 3 cars, which is HO. And I could see having a locomotive and, 3 cars here, as long as they're not really long cars. But since I'm going to put a little staging track on the end, I'm going to move this back a little bit because that way my runaround track, which is here, will be a little bit longer. Might accommodate an extra car. I'm going to move this back probably to around maybe 18, 20 centimeters, and then I will cut this off, solder this part in, and then I will put the bend in the track here and bring it all this way. Figure out how the bend is going to be. So I'll do that now and show you how I'm going to do that. so I've got my little piece of track soldered here. It's straight. Look down. What I'm going to do now is I don't want the bend to be right here. I want the bend to be more down here, and I want this to be straight there. So I'm going to hold this down here, and I'm going to bend just a little bit like this. And what that's going to do, it's going to force one of these rails, the outside rail. Actually, both rails are going to move within the ties. It's going to force it through the ties. So you're not going to be level down there anymore. And this Pico track holds the shape pretty good. If you try to make it bend too tight, of course, it's not going to. But I think that will be good. So now I can locate this where I want it to go. Like that. The next thing I'm going to do is, remember, I'm going to power the frogs. There's a wire underneath the frog, which you can see right here. I'm going to sort of put a little mark here on each side of it, so I can drill a hole down through the foam and the shelf to run this wire through. The other thing I'm going to do is I have never done before. I'm going to try to put the feeders on the bottom of the rails. If you look real closely on my layout, you've got the feeders soldered to the side of the rails. Most of the time, I did a pretty good job of soldering. You can't see them, plus I paint them, paint my rails. So, but I'm going to try it, just a small layout. So I'm going to put a little mark here and a little mark here. I'm actually just going to solder to the bottom of the rail feeders when we do. So we'll drill the holes. I'll show you how we drill the holes, and then we'll solder these on. I'll solder a couple wire feeders on, drill the holes, and we'll run it down through there. And now let's rest the track off camera. All right, so the cat is not our cat. That's Chance. He's a neighborhood cat. We help take care of him, though. There's several neighbors that help feed him because his owners aren't home all the time. He is an indoor-outdoor cat, so he might disappear for days at a time because he'll be inside. But then when he gets home, he'd rather be outside, so he gets home and wanders around for a while. He's a good cat. So I've got the joiners, or the wires, feeder wires, solder onto the bottom. Pretty easy. This wire is barely big enough to stick through all this. So what I did was I drilled the hole for this one, because I didn't want to drill 3 holes and then find out that 2 of them were off or something like that. So I went ahead and drilled this hole, and I marked these again. So I'm going to drill these holes. Lance Minheim, one of his books, I can't remember what they call this bit. Now, someone I'm sure will put it in there in the comments. It's a real long,
he calls it an aircraft bit.
Of course, you'd rather have a little bit smaller diameter, but the small diameter bits aren't long enough to go through this whole section. So it'll be a little bit bigger hole. I'll probably have to, after I get the track in there, sort of fill it with glue or something so it doesn't, it's not a bottomless pit for ballast anyhow. So I'm gonna so depending on which section of the floating shelf you hit, you could be drilling through wood, or you might just be drilling through pretty much a hollow space, or you could hit cardboard, whatever. It really just depends on where you hit. So for that one, those 2 holes, I just went right through, the little shell on each side. But for this one, for the frog, it was a little bit harder to drill. So get these started down in there. Now what's going to happen, the possibility is, because the shelf is floating, this is going to go through the top layer, and then it's going to like be wandering around and you won't be able to hit the hole. So if that happens, then what you can do is take like a hole saw or something, because it doesn't matter. I think that one came through. No, it didn't. What happens is it'll just ball up inside the floating shelf. So what I will do is I'll flip it over and I'll drill bigger holes here, so I know where the little holes are at, and then I can just feed the wires down through pretty easy. That's what I did for Oak Hill, and it worked out pretty well. Again, you're never going to see that part of it in here. All right, I think that's probably enough. Let me check the length of the video. What I'll do is, if I think it's worthy of posting lengthwise, I'll go ahead and I'll start just laying the track on down this way, drilling the holes as I go. This is how far I got. I actually ran out of rail joiners, so I'd ordered another pack. And then I got my hand surgery. And I'm going to Mexico for a very short trip. So when I get back, I'll continue laying the sidings out. But basically, the main lines are in, everything's soldered up, all the wires are fed through the bottom except for the sidings. So everybody stay safe. Well, I flew to San Diego on Monday, and I went to Reed's Hobby Shop and picked up a few things that I'll use probably for the little layout. This might be on the big siding. Might just be a warehouse or something. I haven't decided. This thing is pretty cool. I've never heard of this before. They said they got it in like a collection of stuff, but for $4. I couldn't pass it up. This is some kind of little kit. Again, $6 in a plastic bag. I couldn't hardly pass that up. They had a whole bunch of undecorated Microtrains cars for like $10. So I thought, well, I'll get a couple of tank cars. I'm always looking for tank cars. Maybe I'll try to decal. But anyhow, this stuff I may use on the little layout. Everybody stay safe.